So the Pentagon told us a drone strike in Kuwait killed 6 American service members and wounded a few others. That was the official story. But CBS News dug into it, and what they actually found was a lot worse. More than 30 Americans are still in hospital right now with brain injuries, sharp wounds, and burns. And the government just didn't tell us that. You're going to break down what's actually happening with US troops in the Middle East, with oil prices are climbing again, what Joe Rogan is finally admitting about Trump, and a few other stories you need to hear. Let's get into it. Let's start with what the Pentagon apparently tried to keep quiet. Back in March 1st, the official statement said 5 service members were seriously wounded in a drone attack in Kuwait, with a few others getting minor injuries. Standard language is easy to scroll past, but CBS News is now reporting that dozens of troops suffered injuries from that single strike, including traumatic brain injuries, memory loss, sharp wounds, and burns. More than 30 people were still hospitalized as of this week. That's not a footnote, that's a cover-up of scale. And it's not just Kuwait. At least 7 American service members have been killed since this conflict began. Around 140 have been injured total, including several with life-threatening conditions. Senior defense officials are telling the New York Times that Iran military was learned a lot more from earlier confrontation than anyone expected. They are now specifically targeting our defense system and radar infrastructure across the region, trying to drain US stockpiles. They also been hitting military communication networks and hotels where American troops stay. This is not a disorganized response. Iran is fighting smart. On the broader world picture, the Strait of Hormuz is the main pressure point right now. About 1/5 of the world's oil moves through that waterway. Iran Navy commanders posted on social media that any vessels wanting to pass needs to get permission first. Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, the UAE, and Oman all reported intercepting drones and missiles in a single day. The commercial ships near the strait were hit by projectiles within hours of each other. Iran reportedly claimed responsibility for at least one of those. There were also intelligence reports that Iran was preparing to lay mines in the strait. One unnamed official told the New York Times that no mines have been placed yet, but CNN sources say a few dozen are already in the water, and that Iran still have 80 to 90% of its mine laying capacity intact. US Central Command say they destroyed 60 Iranian mining vessels by end of the day. Whether that actually slows Iran down is unclear. Oil prices hit nearly $120 a barrel at the peak. They since dropped back to around $91, but that's still up from under $73 before the conflict started. The national average at the gas pump was gone up to 11 straight days and is sitting at $3.58 a gallon. Diesel is near $5. The International Energy Agency announced its largest ever oil release from Global Strategic Reserve, 400 million barrels across its 32 member countries. Japan, Germany, and Austria all announced their own release as well. And here is the strange part. Russia and Iran are both quietly benefiting. Russian oil is reportedly trading at premium right now because supply from the Gulf is disrupted. Iran itself is apparently exporting more of towards the Strait of Hormuz than before the conflict started. The US could stop that. They reportedly stuck around 5,000 targets and around Iran, but they deliberate leaving the oil infrastructure alone, including a facility called Kark Island, which handles about 90% of Iran oil exports. One expert told The Guardian that striking will cause a price spike that wouldn't come back down fast. The White House is also reportedly holding Israel back from hitting Iranian energy facilities, partly because those spikes was already blanket Tehran in toxic smoke and acid rain, and partly because Trump apparently wants to do business with Iran's oil sectors after the war, similar to his approach with Venezuela. Now let's talk about Joe Rogan. Because something shifted publicly this weekend, Rogan, who helped push a lot of his audience through Trump, is openly saying that the promise Trump made during the campaign might not have meant anything. His words, not mine. Trump ran hard on ending what he called stupid, senseless war. No more forever wars. That was a central message. And now the US is involved in an active conflict with Iran's Senate Democrats, admitting that Pete Hegseth and Marco Rubio testify under what about the war objectives, arguing that the administration was never clearly explained what the goals are, what the scope is, or what an end actually looks like. Trump himself was being contradicting his own statements almost daily. He called for Iran's unconditional surrender, then said the US was already accomplished its mission. He said the war will end soon because there was almost nothing left to target. They said anytime I want to end, it will end. Meanwhile, American and Israel officials told us slow. They're planning at least 2 more weeks or strikes. Israel's defense minister said the operation will continue without any time limit. 2 other Israel officials told reporters there was no sign the US was close to wrapping up. So, you got Trump saying it's basically over and everyone around him saying it isn't. Rogan's take is that a lot of people feel genuinely betrayed, and it's hard to agree with that framing, when the administration also admit it had no plan for the Strait of Hormuz situation, no organized response rising gas prices, and was caught off guard by the strength of Iran military response. Senator Chris Murphy said after a classified briefing that the administration had no plan safely reopen the strait, and calling it unforgettable because, in his words, this part of disaster was completely foreseeable. Moving on, Kristi Noem is leaving the Department of Homeland Security at the end of March, and that mess she's leaving behind is significant. Trump fired her last week, though it was framed publicly as a promotion. Here is the core problem. Back in June, Noemi decided that every DHS contract worth more than $100,000 had to come to her desk personally for approval. That sounds like accountability. In practice, it creates a massive backing. Sources are telling Axios there is a mountain of backup contracts and invoices that the next person in the job will have to work through. Some vendors reportedly got so frustrating waiting to get paid that they started billing in chunks of $99,999 to get around the threshold. The fallout hits things you care about. FEMA, which handled natural disaster response, had over 1,000 grants and contracts delayed under her watch, with average delay lasting 3 weeks or longer. Trump's border wall, which was one legislation funded to the tune of nearly 2,000 miles, had only 36 miles completed as of mid-February. ICE detention facilities in Texas and New Jersey were running without paid contract extension. One facility rain drying of funding this month. Then there is the luxury jet. DHS leased and tried to buy outright for $70 million. Photos obtained by NBC show a private bedroom, a queen bed, showers, multiple large flat screen TVs, and a bar. There's also 2,500 branding trucks and SUVs with the ICE logo on them that agents reportedly don't want to use because the marketing made them targets. Those vehicles are sitting in garage, and the $200 million advertising campaign, reportedly designed, has much to promote Noem's image to encourage immigrants to self-deport, who handed to connect Republican films without competitive bidding. One company involved was created just days before the contract was finalized. Her top-eyed Corey Lewandowski, who reportedly was a personal relationship with Noem that both of them being married was not stopped, was also approving contracts before they went to her desk. When asked under what whether Lewandowski had any role in proving contacts, Noem said no. ProPublica then obtained records showing he personally approved a multi-million-dollar equipment contract last summer. Senator Richard Blumenthal was said he's opening an investigation into whether Noem committed perjury. This one is more alarming than it might sound at first. A whistleblower is alleging that a former Dodge engineer who worked at the Social Security Administration last year carried two highly restricted databases on a thumb drive when he has left for a private contractor job in October. These databases are called New Mutant and Master Dead File. Together, they reportedly contain social security numbers, birthdays, birthplaces, and parents' names for more than 500 million Americans, living and dead. According to the whistleblower complaint, this person allegedly still had access to his SSA computer and credential after leaving. He reportedly asked a co-worker to help him transfer data for the thumb drive to his personal computer, so he could sanitize it before uploading it to his new employer system. The co-worker refused. The whistleblower says the engineer brushes off legal conscience by saying he accepted a presidential pardon if anything went wrong. The SSA denies that claims. The engineer's lawyer said he denied all wrongdoing. There's not confirmed evidence yet that the data was actually uploaded anywhere. But here is the broader context. This isn't isolated accusation. Last August, the SSA's former chief data officer alleged that Dodge members had uploaded sensitive social security data to a cloud server without adequate server controls. In January, the Department of Justice acknowledged in court that Dodge members was sharing sensitive SSA data without agency official knowing. In a separate case, the Trump administration admitted that Dodge suffered caused a data breach after sharing information with an unnamed political group, allegedly trying to challenge election results in multiple states. The GAO was definitely starting auditing Dodge access to SSA data, but the audit apparently lacks whistleblower protection, which puts the people raising these concerns in a tough spot. So to recap, US troops canalized from that Kuwait drone strikes were apparently much worse than the government admitted. Iran is fighting then except on the Strait of Hormuz situation has no clear resolution. Joe Rogan is publicly questioning whether the man he helped effect mean anything he said about war. Kristi Noem is leaving the HS with a backlog, luxury jet, and a possible perjury investigation behind her, and a former Dodge staffer may have walked out the Social Security Administration with 500 million Americans' personal data on a thumb drive. My question for you, do you think any of these actual leads of accountability? Or does it just become another news cycle? Let me know in the comments, and if you want to stay updated on stories like this, subscribe. I cover this stuff every week.